The 2027 FIFA Women's World Cup is headed to Brazil. So let's talk about it. Well, we have finally found out who the hosts are going to be for the upcoming FIFA Women's World Cup. It has taken too much time and it has given the hosts not enough time to prepare, but we are finally here. We have our hosts. Brazil are going to be hosting the FIFA Women's World Cup for the first time ever. In fact, this is the first FIFA Women's World Cup in South America. So not only is this a historical event in the country, but it is indeed in the nation. The Brazilian bid won over a European bid from 3 joint nations of Belgium, Germany, and the Netherlands. The voting obviously took place in Thailand at the FIFA 74th Congress in Bangkok. Brazil received 119 votes, whereas the European bid received 78 points. 7 countries abstained, and then obviously the 4 countries that are in the bidding race could not vote. Interestingly, there were some technical difficulties where Norway and the Philippines, their own member associations, couldn't cast their vote because of technical difficulties. However, FIFA does say that Norway would have voted for the European bid if they were able to cast their vote, which is pretty consistent with the other nations. So you look at Sweden, England, Spain, Denmark, all of those nations bidded for the European bid. Other countries that voted for Brazil would include the US and Mexico respectively. We obviously know those two were running to host the 2027 World Cup but pulled out just a few weeks ago, feeling that the time would just be insufficient with how close the 2026 World Cup would be happening and that they want to focus their bid on the 2031 bid. Canada also voted for Brazil. So let's talk about what do we expect from Brazil? What have they highlighted? What have they said they want to achieve? And what does it mean that this incredible event, the FIFA Women's World Cup, is going to Brazil for the first time ever? It's going to be hitting this continent, South America, for the first time ever. So the best way to look at what are we going to be expecting from Brazil is going back to their bid books. These bid books have been submitted throughout this bidding process and voting process. Usually they don't fully reflect the reality we get to see 3 years ago, but they are currently our best look of what things could be looking like in Brazil. And I also want to mention that before jumping into what Brazil is expected to put on, this is quite a historic event for the country. I want to remind you that Brazil is a country, like many others, that banned women's football at some point in time. It was banned from 1914 up to 1979, which if you look at those dates and you know the legendary name of Formiga was born a year before the ban was repealed. So this huge legend that really put Brazilian women's football on the map was born when these bans were ongoing. Their first starting 11 or their first international selection came in 1986, which in retrospect is really not that long ago either. And it will become abundantly clear, and it is very, very clear in that bid book, is they want to make those consequences somewhat right. Women in that country can play football for many, many, many years. And now they want to put women at the forefront. They want to bring them at the, center of the stage. It's Brazilian women that they want to focus on. It's South American women in that region they want to focus on. So it's very important that whenever we look at who's hosting a women's event, whether it be the Euros, the U15 World Cup, the biggest World Cup, and the Senior World Cup, which is what Brazil will be hosting, it's important to look back at their history and just recognize that probably at some point in time, they had bans put on women playing football, and it's important to recognize that journey and the fight and the likes of what Formiga and Marta had to do and what they did. I hope Marta unretires when this World Cup goes to Brazil, but we'll have to see until then. And so you see that historical aspect, you see that acknowledgement from the get-go and how the book is titled. Their bid book is titled As Natural as Football, and they're referencing to 2 key ideas that this Brazilian Federation really wants to focus on. The first one is they want to normalize women's football in the country, and they want to break down those existing societal prejudices and barriers around the women's game in Brazil, as well as they want to have a more literal environment, a more sustainable angle to the game. They also want to use this World Cup as a platform for environmental issues like climate change, like biodiversity protection, X, Y, and Z. And this was also brought up in the Brazil presentation at the Congress right before the voting took place. And throughout the bid book, really Brazil wants to highlight that, yes, they want to bring women to the forefront, they want to host this incredible event, but more than anything, and this is a really critical point, is that in Brazil's eyes, they want to make this game, or women's football, in Brazil and in the region, financially sustainable, which is a really, really smart selling point. They set targets to what that region wants to accomplish, the CONMEBOL region, and in terms of increasing the women's team's numbers, participation, the backing that they get, what are the men's team's role in that, and in terms of just what are they going to do in this 3-year cycle, but also the effects that they want to see after the World Cup. They highlight 6 pillars in that bid book. So they aim of making football more accessible to girls and women. They want to strengthen the competitive pyramid, which is a very, very important point. They want to improve the path of national teams, promote the talent ecosystem. Brazil has one of the fastest growing ecosystems, so they want to promote that talent that's already coming and, planning to come into the ecosystem. And like I mentioned, they want to achieve financial sustainability and molding the identity of Brazilian women. So Brazil have pitched in 10 different cities. They originally planned on 8, but in the final bid book, it is 10 different cities. They also promised that when the event is going on, and they've proposed the date from June 24th to July 25th, that all domestic and all major tournaments of the 2 top tiers, both in men and women's football, stop and are suspended at that time. They want to ensure that the stadiums that they want to use, and they've pitched as well as the training sites, are available. They're not ruined by a team who just trained at in the morning, as well as they also want to guarantee that the attention of that football ecosystem in Brazil is on that international competition. This is a really, really smart selling point in the bid book, to dedicate every single postponement of the 2 top tiers in men's and women's football to stop during those 2 dates, to focus fully on this Women's World Cup, is huge and really, really smart. The stadiums that they've chosen in those host cities were either built for the 2014 Men's World Cup, which was hosted in Brazil, or have been refurnished at that time. So these have all been used for a World Cup at some point, likely in the 2014 World Cup. However, they highlight that they don't plan to use the stadiums at their full capacity. They want to reduce stadiums, or in other words, match the demand that they expect these stadiums to fill out, because they want to meet the average attendance that they're expecting. This will allow them to increase or decrease capacities based on the final draw and the future ticketing sale department. Not surprising, I don't think they'll be decreasing. I think we've seen the trend that we've seen, obviously in Australia and New Zealand, and what that looked like. In Brazil, this is even going to be bigger, so I doubt that they'll be decreasing. I guess this is more of leeway in figuring out how they're going to sort out the ticketing system and what numbers they're expecting, but this is not a worry to see in a bid book 3 weeks or 3 years out from a World Cup. They also highlight seats that are like seat kills or obstructed seats that can be sold because they're obstructed or have been removed for VIP or media sections. So stadiums will have to do a little bit of work there, but the stadiums and their gross capacity is absolutely insane. They're humongous. The Rio de Janeiro big stadium, which again I will not attempt to pronounce, has 73,000 people that it can fit in. The smallest stadium that they will be playing at is 42,000. Gross capacity, which in retrospect is still a pretty huge stadium. Brazil also addressed the logistical pieces of transportation and hotels and how that's going to look like. They write in the bid book that Brazil's bid is also committed to providing free transport to and from all stadiums for clients, including all spectators, by making agreements with responsible public transport bodies in host cities. They take those lessons from the 2014 Men's World Cup, and that free transport to tournaments for fans is a very, very important point, and it's a key priority to implement this World Cup. This would be really fun. I think free transport on the public, availabilities that they have there to and from all stadiums for clients, spectators, fans, whatever it may be, will be a great point, and it also saves traveling fans, a lot of money if you think about it. They're also expected to sell and exceed 2.1 million tickets. That is pretty freaking cool, and that is a lot of tickets. Speaking of money, Brazil estimates that it will make $54.7 million in ticket revenue just tickets sold out to games. They're expected to make almost $55 million in revenue. They will also get another $30 million from hospitality packages, about 1.5 each in merchandise and beverage sales, depending on the stadium and again how many games are hosted there. They're also anticipating $100 million estimated for competition-related revenue and $10 million in sponsorship. Put this all together, they'll be shattering another number at that World Cup in revenue. I think even when we looked at the 2023 projected revenue numbers, it went on to break it and go beyond. And so whatever I think Brazil's projecting, whatever FIFA is projecting, I'm not too concerned about the fact that we will see a new number of revenue at the World Cup. Just as a reminder, the 2023 Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand broke even by generating over $570 million. All the dollars that I'm mentioning, by the way, are in American or US dollars. FIFA's technical assessment earlier this month also highlighted how Brazil has a very strong commercial position. It also ranked much higher than the BNG bid on that commercial end. It's expected to be almost $50 million cheaper than FIFA's baseline projected, primarily because of the time zones. Keep in mind the North American and the South American viewers had a horrible time zone difference in the 2023 Women's World Cup, and also would have not been at a great advantage for the European bid. As an EST time zone person, it was absolutely no fun to watch games at 3 a.m. and I think the European bid also would have had me up at 5 or 6 or 7 a.m., which is certainly not ideal on a Wednesday. So Brazil, time zone wise, is great. And also going back to back from one World Cup to another that is not the most suitable time zones for the same people over and over again is just not great. Looking back at that technical assessment that I mentioned, the risk that put the BNG bid down and kind of won it for Brazil was legal risks. They highlight that a number of legal risks have been identified and that FIFA would have not been allowed to have the anticipated operational control, which in other words would have added extra costs for FIFA and whatnot. On top of that, FIFA once again reiterated that their mission is to make sure that women's football grows globally, not just in Europe. We've seen that boom happen, obviously, and it's fantastic. But, you know, a region like South America, who has the brilliant talent that it has and the boom that it's having right now, deserves a World Cup. It's fantastic to see them host this. I feel like Brazil will absolutely show up for this one, and it's time that Brazilian women really get a shine. And you just have to look back at what Formiga and Marta have done for the game. I don't think without these two incredible legends, this would have happened. There are so many opportunities that the South American can take from this. It's a tremendous impact on women's football and the project that they're building there that it is going to be huge. I'm thrilled about this. It's time to start saving for Brazil because that's going to be really, really fun. I've never been to Brazil before. Now we have the location. Unfortunately, it took too long, but here we are. We can finally talk about Brazil being the hosts. Let me know what you thought about this. Let me know your, ideas, initial thoughts. If I seen Brazil win this, are you upset? I did see a lot of fans being quite upset that the European bid did not win this, but you can't win all of them. Also, let me know your thoughts on this changed up setup here. I personally love it. I will be adding a lot more stuff on the wall. If there's anything that you think is worthy of adding on there, please let me know. I'd love to hear your ideas. It's going to be a building block process. So give us some time and it'll look really, really beautiful at the end of it. But I love it. So let me know what you think about it. I think it's awesome. I think it adds a little bit of a fun vibe here. Let me know your thoughts on the World Cup and everything around it. As always, to stay updated and to continue enjoying the beautiful game, make sure you subscribe to me here on YouTube and follow me on Twitter. And I will see you later.